If you're buying a Winchester, make sure it's Pre-64. It gets said casually at gun counters. It gets typed under listings at gun shows. It gets passed down like a rule, not a discussion. But very few people ever stop to ask why. Why does 1 year, 1964, draw such a hard line in the sand? Why does the same rifle with the same name on the receiver suddenly become worth dramatically more just because it was built before that date? And more importantly, was 1964 just a year of change, or was it the year Winchester, as people understood it, quietly died? To answer that, you have to step back to what Winchester was before that moment. Because prior to 1964, Winchester rifles weren't just tools. They were products of a manufacturing philosophy that no longer exists. Before 1964, Winchester was still operating in a world where labor was cheaper than compromise. Receivers were machined from solid steel billets. Bolts were forged, not assembled from simplified components. Feed systems were designed around control, not speed of production. Most importantly, parts weren't simply made to fit within tolerance. They were hand-fitted. That's a phrase people repeat without understanding, so let's be clear. Hand-fitted doesn't mean sloppy. It means the rifle wasn't finished until a human being made it right. Serial numbers were matched, bolts were tuned to their receivers, feed lips were cut for specific cartridges, not generalized across a product line. The level of care is expensive, and by the early 1960s, it was becoming a problem. By the time the 1960s rolled around, Winchester was no longer competing in the same market it helped create. The firearms industry was changing. Remington had introduced the Model 700, a rifle that leaned heavily into modern manufacturing efficiencies. Simpler bolt design, push-feed system, faster production at a lower cost. And it sold very well. Winchester, meanwhile, was still building rifles like it was 1935, not 1963. Every forged receiver, every milled follower, every machined extractor claw. All of it took time. All of it took skilled labor, and all of it cost money that the company was increasingly bleeding. So the decision was made. Not because Winchester forgot how to build great rifles, not because of a factory fire or lost tooling, but because they could no longer afford to build rifles the old way and survive. 1964 wasn't an accident, it was a line item. When the changes came, they came fast and they were permanent. Forged components gave way to sintered steel. Machined parts were replaced with stamped or cast alternatives. Complex hand-fitted systems were simplified for mass production. The rifles still worked, they still shot accurately, but something fundamental was gone. Not accuracy, not reliability in the basic sense. What disappeared was over-engineering. Pre-64 Winchesters weren't built to meet expectations. They were built to exceed them even when there was no financial incentive to do so. And once that mindset vanished, it never came back. If you really want to understand why people draw a hard line at 1964, you don't start with the stock or the finish or the roll mark on the receiver. You start with the bolt, because the bolt tells you what a company believes a rifle's supposed to do. Before 1964, Winchester didn't design the Model 70 bolt to be cheap, fast to assemble, or easy to replace. They designed it to never fail when it mattered. That's why the Pre-64 Model 70 uses what's known as controlled round feed system, a design philosophy that traces its roots straight back to the Mauser 98. And no, that comparison isn't marketing fluff. Winchester knew exactly what they were copying, and they copied it on purpose. On a Pre-64 Model 70, the cartridge is under control from the moment it leaves the magazine. As the bolt moves forward, a large non-rotating extractor claw reaches down and grabs the rim of the cartridge before it ever enters the chamber. From that point on, the round is married to the bolt. It cannot fall free, it cannot miss a line, it cannot bounce around if the rifle is tilted, upside down, or cycling fast. That cartridge stays under control all the way into the chamber and all the way back out again. It's not an accident, that's deliberate. Now compare that to what most modern rifles use, push feed. With a push feed system, the bolt face simply shoves the cartridge forward out of the magazine. The extractor doesn't grab the rim until the round is already seated in the chamber. Most of the time, this works just fine, but most of the time was never the standard Winchester was designing for. Because when you short stroke the bolt, when you cycle fast, When gravity is working against you, the round is briefly uncontrolled. When things go wrong in those moments, they don't go wrong gently. This is why dangerous game hunters cared so much about controlled round feed. This is why professional hunters trusted it. And this is why custom rifle builders, even today, still hunt for Pre-64 Winchester actions to build high-end rifles on. Not because they're nostalgic, because the system works even when the shooter doesn't. That oversized extractor claw isn't elegant, and it isn't sleek. It's unapologetically functional, and it costs money to make. That extractor wasn't stamped, it wasn't clipped into place. It was machined steel, fitted by hand and matched to the rifle. Even the bolt itself carried the rifle's serial number, something you almost never see today. That wasn't for looks, that was because bolts weren't interchangeable. Each one was fitted to that receiver. That level of fitting is expensive, it's slow, and it's completely incompatible with modern mass production, which is exactly why it disappeared. When Winchester crossed into 1964, this bolt went away. Not gradually, not quietly. They replaced it with a push-feed design that was cheaper to produce, easier to assemble, and required far less skilled labor. The rifle still worked. The rifle still shot straight. But it no longer had that absolute mechanical certainty built into it. And that's the difference people feel, even if they can't explain it. Accuracy is where a lot of people get confused. They assume Pre-64 rifles are prized because they're more accurate. It's not really true. From a bench at 100 yards, a modern budget rifle can absolutely shoot alongside an old Winchester. Half-inch groups aren't rare anymore. But rifles aren't just shot from benches. They're carried, they're cycled cold, they're cycled fast, they're used when things aren't perfect. And that's where the Pre-64 design philosophy shows its teeth. Model 70 wasn't built to win accuracy contests, it was built to function under stress. And once you understand that, you start noticing the same mindset everywhere else on the rifle. Take the magazine system. On a Pre-64 Winchester, the follower and feed lips weren't generic parts pulled from a bin. They were forged steel, machined for specific cartridges. 30-06 magazine was cut for 30-06. 270 magazine was cut for 270. That level of specificity is expensive and completely unnecessary if your goal is to simply get rounds into the chamber most of the time. But Winchester wasn't designing for most of the time, they were designing for every time. Compare that to later designs where plastic or aluminum followers became common and one magazine body was used across multiple calibers. It works, but it's not precise, and over decades of use, that difference adds up. Even the safety tells the story. The Pre-64 Model 70 uses a 3-position safety. All the way back, bolt locked, trigger locked. Middle position, bolt free, trigger locked. All the way forward, fire. That system lets you unload the rifle safely without ever taking it off safe. It's not flashy, it's not necessarily for everyone, but it's thoughtful, and again it costs more to make, which is why it didn't survive the cost-cutting era. By the time Winchester reached 1964, they weren't asking, what is the best rifle we can build? They were asking, what rifle can we afford to keep selling? And that single question is why Pre-64 rifles exist as a category at all. We're not even talking about wood yet, or receivers, or floor plates. And already the pattern is clear. Pick up a Pre-64 Model 70 and the first thing you notice isn't the weight, it's the balance. There's no sense that anything is thin where it shouldn't be thin. No feeling that something was good enough. Even the bolt handle shows it. Look closely and you'll see careful shaping, smooth transitions, and finishing that wasn't there just to make it shiny. It was there because rough edges turn into stress points over time. That kind of finishing doesn't help sales numbers, it helps rifles survive generations. Now look at the floor plate. It's steel, not aluminum, not plastic, and more importantly, it doesn't just fall open. Anyone who spent time hunting has seen it happen. Recoil, movement, or just bad luck, and suddenly the magazine dumps itself onto the ground. Pre-64 Winchesters don't do that easily. That trapdoor takes deliberate effort to open. Some people have even complained about it, saying it's too stiff. But stop and think about when you actually open a floor plate. You open it when the hunt is over. You don't open it under pressure. You don't open it in a rush. And what you don't want is for it to open when you didn't ask it to. And again, that stiffness didn't come free. Then there are the sights, or more accurately, how they're attached. On many Pre-64 rifles, the front sight base isn't screwed on, it isn't pinned in as an afterthought. It's part of the barrel itself, machined as one piece. That makes it harder to change, harder to customize, and far more secure. Modern rifles often skip iron sights altogether, assuming the rifle will live under a scope from day one. But Pre-64 Winchesters were built in an era where a rifle was expected to work with or without glass and to keep working no matter how long it was carried. Even the way the barrel interfaces with the stock tells the same story. There's an additional lug up front, something later rifles simply eliminated. Does it make the rifle dramatically more accurate? Probably not. But it does add rigidity, it does add consistency, and it does add cost. And that's the part people keep missing. Every single one of these features taken alone might seem unnecessary, but together they reveal what Winchester believed a rifle should be. By the time you reach the stock, you're already seeing the pattern. Pre-64 stocks were walnut, real walnut, not just cosmetically nice, but structurally sound. Better fit, better inletting, better finish. Later rifles, especially immediately after 1964, suffered here badly. Wood quality dropped, finish quality dropped, fit dropped. Not because Winchester forgot how to do it, because the mandate had changed. Here's the uncomfortable truth that a lot of people don't want to admit. Winchester didn't mess up in 1964, they made a business decision. And from a survival standpoint, it worked. From a legacy standpoint, it was devastating. The rifles made after 1964 weren't junk, they shot accurately, they harvested game, they filled freezers, but they no longer felt like the rifles that would be handed down without question. They felt replaceable. And collectors, whether consciously or not, can sense that.